Okay, hello everyone. Today I have decided to go through all of the elemental types. And these are all of the elementals that I, as a psychic, have seen, but it's going to be through the energy reading I do. So this isn't going to be like one day I woke up and I saw like a fairy flying in front of me. It's not going to be that. It's going to be all of the elementals I've seen in different like celebrity readings, basically. And I'm going to show you examples of celebrities who are holding those elemental types. Yeah. So I don't know how long this video is going to be. Maybe it'll be quite long, but I just thought that would be kind of a cool thing to do. And also because I thought it would be a good idea too, because I would like look in books or like look online for like just like a list of all the elementals that exist. And they're all a little bit different. Like things will be called different names, and sometimes I find it hard to find certain elementals that I see in certain people. So this is like my full elemental dissertation. So just to go over really quick how it's even possible that people can be simultaneously existing as elementals while living here in like a human body. I do see this reality that we live in as being multi-dimensional. So while you're living here and like part of your soul consciousness is experiencing this, you are also existing as a higher being. And this could be, it's not just elementals, it's like different star races who are like in just a higher realm. Could also be angels, different like beings. Like I've seen like really like tall blue beings with big heads. So sometimes when I am doing an energy reading for someone, I can see what higher being or what other being, sometimes I guess it's not higher, but I can tell what other kind of avatar they're occupying simultaneously. And this definitely can show up in like physical traits in someone, as well as like the way they talk, like just little things. Just it's pretty interesting actually. And so some people have a very, very strong elemental energy where to me it's very clear that they've like lived, they have a lot of experience living as an elemental. It's like, it's almost like the more experience you have as a certain being, like the more it kind of imprints onto your soul, like your soul body on this level. I'm sorry, not on this level. In this particular kind of like video game we're in, like in this particular universe that we're in. So yeah, some people, sometimes when I read a celebrity or a person, like they have such strong elemental energy. So those are the people I'm going to use as examples. So it doesn't mean that they are only that type of elemental. It's just that to me, like they have the strongest energy of that elemental that I've personally ever seen. A lot of people are existing as multiple things. So an elemental star race, like several different experiences at once. And this could also be a time thing because in higher dimensions, all time is accessible to us. It's just on this level of reality that we're kind of like stuck in linear time and we have no way of going backwards or forwards in time. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'll just go over really quickly what elementals are. So I see elementals as being beings who have been born from different elements. So that's like the most important thing to keep in mind. So I actually have a little clip kind of explaining how I see elementals as developing from nature. So like how they basically grow from like the earth or the water or whatever it may be. So I will link to that. It's like about 10 minutes. So if you're unsure of what elemental is, you can I would watch that now and then just come back to this. Now for the fun part where we get to go through all of the elemental types. All right, so the first elemental type that I see is quite simply fairies. And fairies have wings. They are usually connected to either green leaves or just leaves or flowers. So there can be a leaf fairy or a flower fairy. Sometimes both. I do find that people who have a lot of fairy energy are often performers. So this is very popular to see in actors. They are especially popular in musical theater and Broadway. So a lot of like Broadway dancers or just dancers in general, very common for them to be fairies. They're also very good at mimicking people, which makes them like pretty funny and pretty good actors. I did a whole video just kind of showing some male fairies specifically. So yeah, feel free to check that out. And here I'm going to put the celebrity examples probably here so you can look at that while I'm explaining. Also say they also act very silly and childlike. So this just makes them very common in the performing arts. I will also sometimes see pixies. So pixies are like fairies. They're just a little more, I would say, wild. They're a little more like, I guess, in your face. The other fairies the leaf and flower fairies are just a little bit more gentle. Pixies have like this extra kind of bug, like a buggy element to them. They have like bug-like wings. They also are very popular in acting and like dancing, especially. I would say that they're just a little bit more like just a little bit more mischievous and like they're gonna get you, you know? Yeah. Okay, and sometimes I also will see people as existing as ice fairies. So the same way that fairies are formed from flowers and leaves, they can also be formed from ice. The ice fairies, I also call them ice queens and kings just because I feel like people can maybe relate to that a bit more. But I do see them as having wings, and they are also common for actors, but not as much as the earthly fairies or pixies. They're just a little bit more reserved, which kind of makes sense if they're like made of ice. I have a blog post about the ice elementals that I will link below if you want to look at more stuff about them. So, yeah. Okay, and the next type I'm going to talk about is sprites. So, sprites are, to me, they're most similar to pixies, except for I see them as being connected more to water and also air and wind and like kind of like water vapor. So their energy is a lot more kind of like airy and like up, like an uplifted kind of feeling. I also see them as being connected to bugs. So that's why they feel similar to pixies. And they also are common in like performing arts, like I mentioned with the other fairies. So they're very common in dance and musical theater, I would say. And in the future, I'm going to be doing like a full length, I think, video on sprites. So yeah, you can look out for that. Probably some short videos as well. Their energy, it's like very, you can even like see with the eyes. Yeah, it's over there. The examples. Their eyes are just so, yeah, there's just something very like electric about them. And I find that their energy is very like electric. It's very fast. It's very, yeah. Yeah, it is like a quick kind of like up kind of energy. All right. And there's also mermaids. So there are some celebrities who are holding like a very strong mermaid energy. Obviously, there's like both mermaids and mermen. I see them as being connected to water and specifically like ocean water. They are very occupied. I find mermaids to be very occupied with everything having to do with love and romance. So I mentioned this in my merman video. Like I did like a full length video about them. And you will notice that mer people in general have like kind of like these calm, kind of whispery voices. I'm kind of outing myself right now with this, but they're kind of, they might be known for their voices. A lot of like opera singers will be mermen. Yeah, and you'll also find that mer people, this is such a thing and it's so weird, but they have, you'll notice, I'll show you a picture here so you can compare, but they often will have like a flat kind of brow bone and their eyebrows will be very flat. Like they'll just kind of like go straight across. Who knows why that is? I don't know. I find also other water elementals to have that too. It's like they have like a very wide and flat forehead. Who knows why? So there's also sirens, which I just consider like a more wild and more intense mermaid. Kind of similar to the pixies, how the pixies are like fairies. It's just that they're a little bit more like intense. And yeah, with the sirens, it's like they're gonna get you. Like that's kind of like the way you could describe it. Like they're just a lot more forward, a lot more direct. They might move faster as well. So yeah. And sirens are pretty much have like the very similar traits to the mermaids. Like they have the same type of voice and all of that. There's also another type of water elemental that's more like, seriously, I see them as being like more closer to a fish than a mermaid, but they still have like that kind of like watery quality. And I see them as being more gentle than a mermaid. and I don't know what to call them. I saw the term undine, so I'm just going to use that for now, but yeah, I want to find out if that's referenced in folklore. So it's like it's like a more fish. It's like a fish elemental that's just more connected, just pure water. Like, yeah. So there's also cloud fairies, and you could call these sylphs. I don't know enough about them yet, but I do occasionally see them. They're pretty rare. They, to me, they have this, again, like kind of, I guess, like a sprite, like very up kind of energy to them. I see them as being connected to air and just like the sky, clouds, and I see them as having wings as well. And then there are flower queens, or flower, you could call them flower nymphs, flower elves, even. So you think about how flower, like there are flower fairies with wings. These are just like flower beings without wings. And yeah, it's definitely like its own type of elemental. And I do see them as kind of like elves for sure. They have like flowers kind of give like a very high and fast energy. And so I find the flower queens, like they talk really fast. Like all of them. They have like a very like high energy. And I have a short video that I did of them, and also a blog post. I'll link that below. There's going to be a lot to link below, but you can check it out if you want to. And then there's also like a boy version of this that I see. So it's possible for men to be flower nymphs as well. And I don't know enough about like their traits yet, but they do all have like this very quick way of talking for sure. Okay, and then there are leaf elves. These are so popular. So popular in like Hollywood and in like acting. Yeah, very popular. I see leaf elves as being obviously connected to leaves. These are like leaf fairies without wings. One common trait that I notice with leaf elves is that they have like this very natural charisma about them. So they're very good at like listening to people and like having like hosting kind of like a conversation. And this could be, I was just thinking that it could be because of like the heart chakra. The heart chakra is green, leaves are green, like, so they're able to really like connect and have like heartfelt conversations. So even if they're not necessarily interested in the topic, like they're still going to hold space. Like they're very good at holding space for people, listening to people, kind of like they could be the centerpiece of like a group conversation and kind of moderate the conversation. You also might see them as being like hosts of talk shows and things like that. And they're like people, like, you know how you have like someone who's a people person? Elves, I find, have that naturally in them. But I'm going to be doing definitely a full video on them because there's so many examples. And this could be why they're very common in Hollywood, because it's this idea of communicating like through the heart, kind of. And then there are leprechauns. So yes, leprechauns do exist. I see them as being similar to pixies. So they're like a smaller elf. That's like, I see them as being connected to leaves, sometimes twigs, and they're just a little bit, yeah, a little bit more mischievous, like they're gonna get you kind of thing, a little more wild. And they're not as common as like the full size elves. But yeah, you can see them in Hollywood and stuff. So there are also, like how there are ice fairies, there are also elves made of ice or who come from the ice. They are it's very interesting because they, to me, they look so similar to each other. I haven't really done like looked into them very much, but in the future I'll definitely be doing like maybe like a short video or like a Tumblr post about them. Okay. Now we're going to get into the lower level elementals. So these are elementals who are connected to dirt and like just stuff underground, like rocks, things like that. So one lower level elemental I see often is gnomes. Yes, gnomes do exist. And it's funny because I have like a thing, I have like a weird thing with gnomes. Like, I'm not going to say I'm like straight up afraid of them, but for some reason, I think it might be because my twin sister is very connected to them. That when I see them, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I just get a little freaked out because maybe because they're like kind of acting like my sister, and I'm like, get a little freaked out over it. But at the end of the day, I love gnomes. Okay. Gnomes are fine by me. I don't know why I have to get over it. I have to get over the fear. So gnomes I find have this very like commanding presence. So when they talk, you're like, oh, like I have to listen. I have to listen to what they're saying. Like they're very intentional when they speak. They also, I find, will be very good. Like I know it's like stereotypical, but they will be passionate about growing their own food and maybe gardening. A lot of people who do home renovation, so like famous home renovation people or famous like gardening experts, like they're gnomes often. Um, what else? People who are very passionate about like digital detox, like just kind of leaving the corporate world and like living off the grid, kind of just like surviving off the land. Those people often are gnomes. Like that's kind of like they're really into it. That's like their passion. So if you ever see someone who's like, I don't know, who is teaching people how to live without their phone or like live totally off the land, there's a good chance that they're a gnome. Okay, and there are also wood elves. So these are elves who are come from wood. This could be like tree trunks, tree branches. I don't know enough about them, and they're not super common. But in the future, like I may do some kind of like post about them. And then there are trolls. So I see trolls as being made from rocks and dirt. It is actually pretty common for athletes to be connected to this elemental, like specifically like football players, like the more, you know what I mean? And yeah, again, I will in the future probably do like a short post or a short video on trolls. There's also dwarves. So I see dwarves as being connected to rocks and metals as well as like crystals. So very hard, like very hard and dense materials. They definitely have like a sharp stare to their eyes for sure. And yeah, there's also a whole, yeah, I know there's a lot. There's also a whole class of goblins. So sometimes I will see someone as being connected to a type of goblin. Goblins are, to me, they come from like kind of like marshlands. It's like marsh, like moss, like that kind of swampy kind of water. Also like mud and like earth. So you could say that they're connected to earth and water usually. And I don't know enough about goblins yet to know all the different types. I just know that there are different types. There are also brownies, which is like a smaller goblin that I see as being more connected to water. So it's a little bit more watery. So this is an example of a brownie. And with goblins, like just like how with fairies, there's like a more light, gentle version, and then there's more like of a mischievous, like kind of like more intense version. That's the same with goblins. Yeah. And there are also gremlins who I consider to be more connected to like who I consider to be connected to mud. So like they're more dense, like they're a more dense kind of goblin who is more connected to earth, but still connected to water as well. So that there's an example as well of a gremlin. Okay, and these are some more rare types. So I rarely ever see these, and they're not really talked about a lot, like in popular culture. But one elemental that I sometimes see is like a very, very, very dark mermaid or merman, and I consider these people to be connected to, like, I call them sea witches or like sea warlocks or something. Yeah, they're just like a more dark siren, actually. That's how you could put it. So more intense, more of that, yeah, that intensity. Also kelpies. So that's another type of water elemental. And you'll see that they have similar, like that similar like brow bone as the mermaids. Kelpies basically are just water horses. So they have like that watery element, but then they're also a horse. So yeah, they really do. They really do exist. Kelpies I find to be even more, they have more of, they feel more watery even than mermaids. And they kind of have like this more deep sea. It's like a deep sea kind of feeling to them. But yeah, they also have like that, like similar to mermaids, they also have that stare where you feel like you're kind of drowning in their eyes. They're like hypnotizing you kind of. And very occasionally I will see tree people. So these are like big, like trees come to life pretty much. Connected to wood, obviously, and maybe some leaves. Also, I will occasionally see fire elementals. It's not crazy common, but it is common enough. So I'll see sometimes someone being connected to like these little like fire breathing snakes kind of. It's very clear to me that they're connected to the fire element. When I looked up all the different types of fire elementals, I saw that there's like these little kind of mini, kind of like fire breathing dragons, and they call them salamanders. So that might be what I'm seeing. So here's an example of someone who is connected to that. type of elemental. I will also sometimes see people as being connected to like just pure fire. So they're kind of like fire spirits. I also call them fire dancers just because that's just what it seems like to me. So these could maybe be like nymphs who are made out of fire, or elves made from fire. I will also very occasionally see someone who's like a bigger fire being, and I call these people fire queens or kings. So they look big, like they're like this big fire person, like a being who was like born from, or who comes from the fire basically. And I haven't like looked into the fire elementals to really see the different traits. One thing that I do find is that they talk loudly. So there you go. That's one trait, one common trait. So that's it for this video. In the future, yeah, I will be doing more videos on elementals, but I just wanted to, I don't know, just kind of like the idea just like fell into my head. I was like, yeah, I should just do this. So hopefully you enjoyed, and definitely check out my blog for more about this stuff, and I will see you in the next one.